My guess is that most people will opt to use the automatic settings on their cameras to make videos. That makes sense, it's easier and faster. But there are some settings that you should know about. So give me a couple of minutes to talk about what the manual settings are and how you might use them. As you get used to making videos with your phone, you might find use for these manual settings because they'll help you to get a more precise image. This is the automatic default for most cameras and apps. So if you're not interested in the manual settings, this is one less step for you. However, depending on the project, there are a couple of settings you do need to know about on your camera. Your camera can record video at different resolutions. Here's a very quick breakdown. Resolutions refer to how many pixels are in the image. Without getting into long explanation, let me say that there are three settings that you'll want to be conscious of: 720p, 1080p, and 4K. P refers to the progressive fields of the image versus interlaced fields. Really nothing you need to worry about for now. 4K captures 4 times the amount of information. Great for huge screens. 1080p has become the standard for most television broadcasts. It's great, it's high quality. Do you need 4K for internet videos? Probably not at this point. Most audiences are watching on small screens and they really can't tell the difference. Plus, what a signal needs to send a 4K through Wi-Fi is just really too big. This brings me to 720p. This is half the amount of information than a 1080p. Given the option, I'd recommend using 1080p at this time because the high definition quality looks great for most applications. Frame rate refers to how many photos the video takes every second. Most videos are recorded at 30 FPS, or frames per second. Some cameras can record up to 60 FPS, essentially letting you double the amount of information and potentially the quality of your image. But quite honestly, I don't use that feature and I don't recommend you worrying about it at this point. Some apps allow you to record at 24 FPS rather than 30 frames per second. 24 frames per second is what traditional film cameras would shoot at, making the image look very smooth and very natural. 30 frames per second is the standard for video and television. Most people use the standard 30 frames per second. Take a moment to check your phone in the settings. There are three important factors in photography, film, and video cameras. Most of the apps that come with your phone, these settings will be automatic. You can get apps that give you a lot more control, and once you do get used to shooting, I recommend you giving one of these apps a try because they'll give you more options to play with things like aperture, ISO or gain, and the white balance. But it's important that you know a little bit about what each of these things does, even if you're not going to use them in the manual settings. So let me briefly explain. The aperture is the amount of light that the lens lets in. The lower the f-stop, the more light gets through the lens. In very bright settings, you can close down the aperture and let in less light. White balance is also something your camera will take care of in automatic mode. The camera measures the temperature of the light sources and corrects the color to make it appear more white. Light comes in degrees Kelvin, meaning that it can appear orange or blue, and the white balance makes the color of your image appear most natural. This is most helpful when it comes to shooting indoors, and the overhead light makes the person appear a sickly yellow. Quick review of this section. Best to start in the automatic settings. Every device comes with this feature, but you need to decide on the quality of what you're going to record. Getting into your phone settings and setting the recording video to 1080p at 30 frames per second. You can't go wrong with this. When you start to master your phone or your camera for video, you'll want to find an app that gives you a little more control of the image that you're going to record. While you're most concerned with the content of your video, it's important to be conscious of how things look and sound. Your audience will appreciate you for it. You want to represent yourself and your organization as professionally as possible. Next, let's do some exercises to increase your skills with the camera and we'll record some shots that we're going to use later for editing exercises.